Edmund Husserl was a German philosopher born in 1859. He earned a PhD in mathematics, but as he aged, he began to focus more on the meaning of thought and perspective. There are two major ideas that he published which are still studied, analyzed, and considered today. In this clip, we will look at these theories through a psychological lens, as they correlate strongly with more recent discoveries. Edmund's two ideas to be discussed today are intentionality and logic. Let's take a look at intentionality first. He broke it down into three parts: the intentional act, the intentional object, and the intentional content. The intentional act is the actual mental event of perceiving, believing, evaluating, or remembering. The intentional object is the thing you are using that brain power to think about. And finally, the intentional content is the way in which you perceive that object. Now this is the part that can get a little tricky. Everyone sees the same apple, but it may not mean the same thing to everyone. The same intentional object is being perceived, but to an apple farmer whose life depends on these apples and a person who has never eaten an apple, the apple's intentional content would be completely different. Husserl deemed this stage as the one in which different people will have different perspectives because of different experiences. To recap, the intentional act is sort of like the verb, the intentional object is like the noun, and the intentional content is where your psychology comes into play. Modern psychologists use the biopsychosocial method to break down thoughts. They say that on top of the experience or social factor, as Husserl claimed, the perception of the world also involves psychological factors such as emotion and stress, as well as biological contributions such as ancestry and genetics. Husserl's other radical idea at the time was the idea of logic. He broke this down into two parts. First was the idea of pure logic, and the second was the idea of ideal matter. Pure logic is the actual object or bit of information before it is processed. This part, according to Husserl, does not need a human mind to occur. But the second part, ideal matter, is the processing of that pure logic. The moment this occurs is called the moment of quality, where the human mind and the pure logic idea come together. One studying modern psychology would refer to these steps as processing and coding of a stimulus. His ideas were early attempts at studying the human mind, and his ideas are very similar to those taught today. All in all, Husserl was a radical, sort of out there existentialist who would be fairly unhappy that we refer to him as such.